It's great to see everybody here this morning, and I hope you're as excited as I am to spend the next 35 minutes or so hearing what's going on with these four terrific panelists that we have here with us this morning. As you know, the theme of our event today is the future of federal finance. I think Andrea did an excellent job of putting us in the mindset of where technology can take us. And I'm pleased to announce for you, Vic, that your friend Vicky, right, can reside in your SAP system today, which is pretty cool. I don't know that I ever anticipated I'd see the day when I could talk to SAP and it would respond to me like Alexa. But that's where we are and where the technology is going. So our panelists here, each one has a sort of a different role in their organizations, and I thought it would be interesting to have a round robin and let them share with us from their vantage points a short description of their role and how they're transforming finance in their organizations today. So Doug, since you're right next to me, why don't I just let you dive in first and we'll just walk down the group.
All right. Just to expand on that opening comment, literally 2 Fridays ago, I went home, got home about 5 o'clock, and within 30 minutes of getting in the door, it dawned on me that I was going to get married in 48 hours. So, we've been dating for 5 years and we're not pregnant, just in case you're curious. I think the short answer to that question is I'm trying to pull DoD up to the current state of of average fiscal maturity, to be candid. And I don't want to besmirch my current agency, but it's about 20 years behind, I think, the other executive branch agencies. I left an agency that was tied for the second best audit report in the government with one significant deficiency for an agency that has 25 material weaknesses. So I'm trying to pull it up to get rid of those material weaknesses, get to that clean opinion, and knock down the biggest hurdle to the United States government clean audit opinion. And SAP is certainly a part of that. We're used at Navy, Defense Logistics Agency, and a couple of other entities within the department. However, I should also note that there are some really exciting and industry-leading things going on around data. That one of the things that Department of Defense, I think, is leading on is data science, realizing the amount of data that they have at their disposal and using that data as an asset. So I'm trying to catch up on that as well as bring it up in terms of fiscal maturity.
Okay. Lori, how about you?
So I'm a senior advisor at the Treasury's Fiscal Service, and I'm working on implementing the 10-year vision. John Hill will talk a little bit more about that at your keynote at the end of the session. I'm also working on establishing the financial management QSMO for Treasury. So I think everybody knows that OMB released a memo in April. So what we're really doing is we're looking at the CFO Act is 30 years old, almost 30 years old, and agencies have spent hundreds of billions of dollars to implement core financial management systems. And we spent a lot of time talking to SAP and the other software providers. And what we found is that while we have made good progress in implementing modern systems in agencies, maybe we didn't optimize those configurations and those solutions as best as we could. And also CFOs are in this constant cycle of upgrading their technology and your software that's become very burdensome and costly. And we're doing it iteratively across many different agencies. And GAO has come in and criticized OMB and the federal government in general about not really having a strategic approach to modernizing your core FMS. So what the QSMO is really charged with now is looking at the landscape of core FMS and modernizing it for the future. So we're talking about taking a slow approach, a measured approach, but understanding the agency's needs, understanding industry's capabilities, and forming a cloud that will allow agencies to leverage a common environment and get those innovations that we need. So that's what we're doing with the QSMO.
Okay, thank you.
Well, good morning. My name is Joe Ditchett. I'm from the Navy. I represent the program Navy ERP and the product. I'm honored to be here, sitting with such big thinkers. I am much more at the lower level, So I really represent the work and delivery in many ways. So we take grand ideas and we put them into action, and we figure out how we break down barriers and work with partners. Most recently, and part of the reason why I'm here today, is we took our major, very kind of standard ERP, monolithic, huge, normal trajectory ERP, and we took that, put it on HANA, and we put it in the cloud. For the Navy, that was very much our moonshot. We took our 20-month schedule and put it into 9 months and delivered. So we'll talk a little bit more about that today, I think, but from my office, what we normally look at is how we take some of these new technologies, not just technologies, but service offerings and partnerships, and put them into an actionable effort. So a user, whether it's someone that's at a keyboard or a decision maker, has data and access to data and visibility of data to make efficient decisions.
My name is Gerard Bedoric. I'm the CFO and Performance Improvement Officer at GSA. I've been in federal government just under 5 years. And I know you probably all heard of GSA, but we do work for other agencies, and you pay us about $30 billion a year to do that work. So we manage government real estate and buildings, we do acquisitions, we manage a fleet of a couple 100,000 vehicles, and we also do technology transformation. So as a CFO, you're responsible for the collection, issue resolution of the revenue that comes in to support the agency, as well as the expenses. When I came into GSA a little over 4 years ago, it was the organization had consolidated all the finance personnel from all the business units under the CFO. And at one time, the staff was over 900. The business units had given up their finance personnel. You know, they understood it. I don't think they were allowed a huge vote in the process, but the decisions were made to consolidate. So I came in to try to get the organization established, create a new structure, and I focused really on people and process, culture, reorganization, and things like that. Technology, and I think there was a question asked about spending. I really couldn't come in and say, okay, let me spend tens of millions of dollars, and 5 years from today, you'll see efficiency and savings and all of that. So I had to really focus on making improvements and changes right away. So was able to do that. What's been interesting is the last 18 months been focused in technology. And the reason that I really like that is it enables you to offer solutions to your staff that helps them perform their job more effectively, and also staff outside of the CFO organization that you impose work on. And RPA is the technology that we're using heavily today because it is a quick solution, and you get the savings and the benefits, and it's not always savings, it's really value immediately. And so it is a way that I can use technology today to have immediate benefit, immediate payback.
Great, thanks. There's already lots going on, as you've heard. So let's dive a little deeper into each area here with our panelists. Lori, I'm going to start with you. You mentioned OMB's new policy on shared services. I'm sure many of us here in this room are interested to learn more about how you envision that marketplace for financial management systems operating, and recognizing that the devil's in the details. Please share with us what you can as to what you see as the path for the agencies to that marketplace and to the standard baseline configuration that you're advocating.
So it'll be a long journey to get to the envisioned end state of having all of core FMS and all the agencies in the cloud, right? But to get there, we really need to enable standards and embed them into those solutions. So the trick is going to be to figure out the right mix of what needs to be standard for all of government and what needs to be maintained as agency specific, right? Because you have your own things like you want to tailor yourself to. That was important to Andrea and DOI, right? You want to be able to tailor things. But there's a lot of things that we know that we can certainly standardize. So what you'll see Treasury and probably the other QSIMOs doing in the other business lines is working with the customers, the agencies, and understanding your needs and your plans for the future. And we'll also be engaging with industry. We already have been with SAP and some of their competitors to really understand how you plan to offer core FMS in the cloud. And once we get that done, we'll be building a roadmap to get there. So, the long-term goal really is to leverage those standards and to embed them. And there's a lot of benefits. There's a lot of ways that we'll do that. One is we'll look at standardizing certain data elements. That's one. We're talking about standard interfaces or APIs, and also the standard baseline configuration that Leslie mentioned. So where we can standardize, we will. And the good news is that standardization will really ease agencies' adoption of the cloud. And it will also promote that interoperability. So that's really important when we talk about standards, that we're not just talking about the standards in FM, but we're also talking about the standards in the mixed systems or the other business lines that the core FMS has to interact with, right? So that'll be an important aspect of the work that we'll be doing in the next couple of years. And we also want to provide that easy access to the data that Doug mentioned, which is the number one asset of a CFO shop.
I need to get you a
cold.
Get a glass of water.
And I get all choked
We'll
up
get you a
about
glass of
financial
water.
management. Yes,
I understand.
I think that's it. No, thanks. I told him I was probably gonna choke up. So thank you.
Thanks so much.
I think that's about it.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. It's going to be very interesting to see this new policy unfold and the quality service management organizations get up and running. I think we recognize that is a good government initiative, and we look forward to watching it.
I think the take-home message, everybody, is slow and steady and lots of collaboration. So don't go home and have a heart attack. Right?
Okay, that's good to hear. All right. Gerard, I'm going to move to you next. You've told us you're GSA's CFO, but you've also shared with us that you're the leader of a government-wide community of practice for robotic process automation. Can you share with us some of the applications of that technology that you're seeing gain acceptance, and what kind of benefits are they bringing to the agencies? And on the flip side of that too, are there some real lessons learned that you're starting to gather that can be of benefit to agencies as they think about how they might move forward with these new technologies?
Yeah, so the RPA I'd heard about in various seminars, and everybody was excited about it, but when I went back to work, I had a full-time job and didn't pay any attention to it. So I woke up one day and said, okay, let's see if we can implement a bot in 100 days with all the IT approvals, platform, and all that. So we set that as a goal. What's happened is we've been able to implement automations fairly rapidly and had a lot of interest from other agencies, and probably 30 or more groups came to us saying, can you talk to us about what you have been able to do? So that led us to establish a community of practice across the federal government. And the idea of the community of practice is all agencies are facing similar hurdles and problems, and they're doing it on their own. And so some can move ahead, and it sounds like DOI has made great progress. Others can struggle some, and others are starting later. So instead of having 24 agencies or 50 agencies, whatever it is, trying to figure this out on their own, how can we come up with some common solutions that will work across government and share the knowledge? So what we've been able to do, and we've worked closely with DOD and Army and some of the civilian agencies that are leaders, and we've come up with some of the good ideas of how you solve some of these challenges. And we're going to publish a playbook with the approach, and the approach will lay out if you're starting or you're an emerging program or a more mature program, how you move to the next level. The other thing we're doing is we have webinars and seminars that will cover how you can solve some of these problems. So tomorrow we have one on technology. 2 weeks ago we had one on finance use cases. So we had agencies, and so it sounds like we gotta talk and applications that you have in the finance area. We had about 80 people divided up in workshops and shared some of the good use cases. And we're going to create a use case library that will be available so that as agencies start an RPA, they don't have to think about the really good applications or the simple ones or things they can do. So contract closeout is one that we have as well. So sharing that knowledge across agencies, solving the problems with the leaders in this area, and sharing that knowledge, and we're going to do this for procurement and for HR as well, but we're going to share that information across all government agencies, so all agencies will be able to move forward, and RPA will become a bigger factor across federal government.
Thank you, Gerard. That's very exciting. I see we're sort of all moving in the same direction. In finance, I know our SAP development organization has a goal with the new technologies that we're incorporating into the software to automate like 50% of financial processing. So that's our North Star that we're looking at, and it's exciting to see these kinds of things coming into reality. Next, Joe, I'm going to ask you to share a little more with us about your move to the cloud. It was clearly a major undertaking, probably involved a pretty fair degree of risk. It's one of those that probably would have kept me awake if I was the one responsible for making it happen. He's still awake. What were the benefits that you expected to get out of making this transition? And now that you're several months into being live, what has been the impact to your end user community? And also, how does making that move support, or how does that align with your the Navy's plans for innovation or being able to adopt innovations in the future?
Sure. I alluded to earlier that our application has lived through a lot of common experiences for ERPs, very large, cumbersome, and really had been kind of brought down to a bare maintenance mode over the years. So in the years leading up to our project plan for the cloud migration, one, we identified the need, partly through user experience, not being able to access data, long run times for reports, simple reports that would take 30 hours to run, and by the time you got it, the data was too old anyway to use. Brittle data, actually, too. So this all led into, as we had planned the project, into a year-end close in 2018, where we actually had a malfunction that actually interrupted year-end close. So this was the perfect time to do a major application upgrade and move to the cloud. And like I said, it was our moonshot. So trying to do those two at the same time was really innovative and different for us. What we really found is the criticality of partnering with different agencies and different organizations, and that's where a lot of our risk was really imbued as we had crashed the course. Zero slack over 9 months. We really had to partner with organizations like DISA, internal organizations to Navy, DoD, other technologies as far as SAP NS2 and our partners at Amazon. So what we've experienced since then, after going live in August, there's a little bit of volatility as we stabilize the system. We found that the application in the cloud is extraordinarily speedy, reliable. The act of getting to the cloud is a little different for us. So getting to and from the cloud, that's another lesson that we're taking on board and figuring out how not only do we deliver an application, but how do we deliver the service associated with the application. And so our users are finding that when they're in the application, they are running reports that used to take 30 hours down to times as low as 10 minutes. We went into a year-end close this year with actually, we were holding our breath, but coming out of it, we were pretty confident. It was a pretty smooth year-end close this year. Because August feels so long ago, but it really wasn't. We're still honing and toning the system in many ways, but it has really positioned us to take innovation to a different level by leveraging opportunities within the cloud and exploring new areas as far for data visibility and data access. So we're now branching out into business intelligence analytics, figuring out new ways to do it, because those are new areas for us as well in many ways.
That sounds very exciting. Have been thrilled when the decision was made before you, or as you got going, to compress your schedule. I think everybody sort of was like, whoa, can this be done? And I think the proof's in the pudding, right? It can be done, and that was quite an accomplishment, so congratulations to your team. Doug, so you recently, I guess it's been, about a year?
Yes.
Moved over to the Department of Defense after after a long career on the civilian side of the government. I'm interested in your observations. Have you found that the Department of Defense approaches financial management differently than the civilian agencies? And what are the particular challenges and opportunities that you've observed? And do they have some relevance more broadly than just inside the Department of Defense?
Yeah, and Joe, correct me if I'm wrong, but I get the sense that DoD is undergoing a cultural revolution right now, which is really neat to be part of, to be honest. I mentioned earlier that it's probably, in my estimation, about 20 years behind in fiscal maturity, and I would say that's for two very good reasons. First, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. They had things that were getting things where they needed to be. And two, there was a focus on bombs and bullets and supporting the warfighter, which hopefully we all agree is certainly an understandable priority. However, because of that perspective, we've kind of let some of the back office overhead type stuff fall behind, and now the light bulbs are going off. Hey, we need to change. We're behind. We're missing out on data analysis and all the opportunities that go with good systems and good data and good internal controls. Navy we're watching very closely because in some ways they have the farthest to go, but they've got the most aggressive plan and the strongest leadership. And actually, Navy, I think, was tied for first in terms of closing findings from the auditors last year, which, Joe, you guys should be very, very proud of. And just I mentioned the 25 material weaknesses that we picked up last year. If you're curious, we closed a quarter of all findings from last year, which shows that DoD is really embracing the need for change. And where we see that is instead of the if it ain't broke, don't fix it, we're hearing things from like John Gravine, a Navy systems guy. Hey, new pay. Why aren't we on the cutting edge of that? Why aren't we embracing this early so that we can start to mold it and shape it the way we would like to see it? Same thing with SAP and HANA and moving to the cloud. Let's embrace the new opportunities that they exist and take those on as opposed to just making do with what's worked for the last 20, 30, 40, and in some cases 50 years. Yeah, we actually do have some Cobalt systems out there. So that's, I guess that's my answer.
Okay, well, thank you. I know you have a big challenge ahead, but I sense, as you mentioned, a real building momentum and within the department to take the challenges on and get the job done and realize the real benefits that derive from having good, reliable, timely, accurate financial information that can be used to deliver on the mission.
And that's part of the exciting part because people are seeing as we're putting reports out there, as we're making system analysis available for free to the services and saying, look at the dashboards that we can create for you. If you just give us our data, here's the dashboard we can produce for you. Instead of using Excel spreadsheets and data calls and dumping it into PowerPoints for presentations, put it online in a dashboard with some of the analysis tools that are out there so that you can get your information real time and you can look at a summary level. Hey, do I have a problem here or not? And if I do, can I start to drill into it to see which service, which base, which location, which command, which program within that command is really generating the problem?
Thank you. All right, so I'm going to open up to the panelists right now. You get all excited, right? And I'm already thinking about walking into my office and getting it to respond to my commands. But sort of bringing us back down to earth a little bit, what do you see as some of the major obstacles or challenges that will have to be overcome as you move toward this future vision? What's standing in the way? Anybody want to jump in?
We can jump in if you want.
Okay, Doug, go for it.
I think there's going to be a skill set change needed. I go back to my college degree where I was taught the role of the accountant is to provide timely, useful information. All right, where does that information come from? It comes from data. All right. Now, we've done a very good job with the data that we have, at least on the financial side, revenues and expenses, but it's primarily expenses. And if anybody has heard me talk before, you know I like to say, look, we're real good at reporting about what things cost. We're not very good about reporting what value you get out of that. So I think we're going to need less accountants out there. We're going to need more data scientists. And I had a rock star data scientist at my previous agency. This guy had a non-supervisory GS-15, 100% telework job. Is there a better position in the federal government out there? Probably not. And I still could not keep him because these guys are in such high demand right now. Andrea was talking about RPAs and robots. They're doing amazing. Contract closeout. Who's not dealing in the agency? Who's not dealing with old obligations? I mean, I think we all are. Having a robot accelerate the closeout process is something we could all benefit from. So using robots out there to do analysis, pull samples, start to record some of the accounting operations and transactions that we're dealing with. I would not be surprised if RPA technology really automates accounting operations and auditing of our transactions and balances significantly. As a result, though, that means we're going to need less debit and credit skills and more analysis skills. And when I talk about data science, that's not just working with the data you have, that's also getting other data sets and being able to marry up different data sets for larger data sets where you can look at pros, cons, costs, and benefits, or different aspects of a given issue.
All right. Certainly a challenge we're all going to face. Gerard.
I think it's understanding it and getting started. You think about artificial intelligence and blockchain. So I had a chat with the CEO at a public company this summer, and we talked about artificial intelligence, and I said, this seems sort of vague. Do you really understand it? He goes, no, there's a little bit of vagueness to all this. And blockchain, had a breakfast with 7, 8 private sector CFOs and some other folks, and we spent the first 20 minutes we all realized we didn't really understand blockchains. We spent the first 20, 25 minutes just going through an example. So the ability to understand the technology and come up with an application and do some execution is key. And so like with RPA, which is simpler, in RPA we had agencies like Treasury and NASA and now DHS and NSF and GSA that are really coming up with examples for the rest of the federal government. So we need some good blockchain use cases that are done by some agencies that can figure it out. And we have to share that with everybody else because we really have to get started and we have to be able to execute, just not talk about the vision and strategy, but actually implement something and learn from each other.
All right. Sometimes I think the best way to get, when our experience and frame of reference stands in the way of getting ourselves into that new world, maybe we need to turn the problem over to some elementary school children, right, to think about how they'd go about solving it. Sometimes they have insights that are hard for the rest of us. Any thoughts on obstacles you envision, Lori, or?
Yeah, so I see big obstacles in change management. So getting agreements on, moving to these large changes that we want to move forward on, I think it's always a challenge. And the other big challenge I see is actually the cost. So specifically when we talk about the cost of moving the federal government to the cloud, it's a huge cost in the models that we have today. So I think we really need to challenge ourselves as the federal government and our partners in private sector to look at ways that we can reduce that cost of that move to the cloud. Right? So what kind of tools can you bring? What kind of process can you bring so it is easier for an agency to move from their current system into the cloud?
Yeah, that certainly will be a challenge to be overcome. Any thoughts from your perspective, Joe?
Sure. I mean, obviously I'm going to echo a lot of what they said, but for me, a lot of the challenges really come down to translating ideas into action and work, interpreting that and fielding work. And that's really a lot of where our challenges are going to lie because you have to work inter-organizationally and figure out how those work packages hook with other teams, whether that's an internal agency team or an organization or an external agency team, and moving that out and actually doing the work and getting action and doing the implementation. That collaboration and that leading change, and I say leading change, not just change management, but leading change is where the work is really going to happen. And that's where a lot of organizations will fail. And that's where a lot of the hurdles are going to need to be overcome in my mind.
Okay. Some great insights from you all. Thank you. We have a little over 5 minutes left, and I thought I would give an opportunity for those of you in the room to ask some questions of our panelists if you'd like. The team here has roving microphones. He's coming your way.
Talk loud. It's okay.
That's okay.
Okay. Got it. Now, this question is for Joe and Doug. from a Navy DoD perspective, you mentioned cultural change, and it's very obvious that is taking place. Are you seeing more like they don't understand the technology? Is it a cost factor? Maybe resistance to change? Can you elaborate a little more about that?
Yeah, let me give you an example that I've seen. I think we all know about the service rivalries, the Army-Navy game and all that kind of stuff. And what I have seen is that there's a lot of duplicative systems out there that solve the same problems, because Navy's got theirs, Army's got theirs, Air Force has theirs. But one of the changes now, like access control, the single largest source of findings in our audit last year was controlling access to our IT systems. Now, if you step back and think for a minute, does that sound like a problem? Do you think there's bad guys trying to get in our systems? Yeah. So, of course, we put a team together, like, look, we got to solve this, not just for an NFR issue, not just for closing findings, but this is a national security thing, so let's go after this. And we settled on a solution like, all right, folks, this is what we think the corporate solution is going to, we said we need a corporate solution. Let's not solve this multiple times different ways. And actually, Air Force was the farthest along with a solution. And so we said, hey, Air Force, would you entertain being a corporate or enterprise solution? And Army's already on board with coming on board using that Air Force system as opposed to creating their own. So that's part of the cultural change that I'm seeing. I don't know if you want to expand on that, Joe.
Well, definitely from a program manager at our level too, there's also some kind of process change that needs to be managed. We had to get a lot of stakeholders more comfortable with partnering with industry. People in our organization got very comfortable with managing IT systems on their own, kind of enclaved by themselves, but being able to reach out into industry, into a cloud environment, proving out those controls, those are all new topics to a lot of people and understanding what they are. Cloud is kind of this notional term to a lot of people. So there's some organizational change like that. At a big Navy level, we often don't operate at a headquarters mentality. We operate where our captains are empowered to go do things on their own. So trying to figure out how we marry big decision making with empowering users and commanders and bringing those two into some type of converged environment is where a lot of our change is happening.
Yeah.
Hi, I'm Jay Maxwell from the SBA. Question for you, Joe. I formerly was at a DoD agency, USIS, it's accredited university. And one of the biggest challenges, at least as a supervisor that I had back then, was when dealing with DoD interagency transfers, because you have over 20 different systems. So the $10,000 question is, when will DoD finally succumb to the fact that they need a unity civil servant system where all the different agencies within the DoD can work together in one platform so that we can be more cost effective?
All right, you said Joe, but you talked to Doug, so just Joe or me?
I'm happy to let him take the question.
All right.
So I was suspecting many of you didn't hear the question. The question, in a nutshell, is when will the DoD move toward a DoD-wide system instead of having multiple systems across the department at the service or other defense agency level?
Now, were you talking for as a consolidated like ERP type system? But I thought I heard you say departmental eliminations.
I love this to be a class example. We had students, medical students, for example, that were using BTS course SAP on hand, is taking over the travel module. It would take an average of about 3 weeks for a medical student to file their voucher when the law is 5 days they have to file. So here, first of all, you have downtime for the medical student, the costs associated with the travel transaction, which by the way the taxpayers could pay. It's ridiculous. There's a loss of economic value.
Oh, sure.
It's a very big problem. And one of my complaints, not just to say complaint, is that federal government generally run into different opportunities to buy systems without doing a serious assessment to see if they're cost effective. And I think that's the biggest complaint I have, not just as a federal civil servant, but as a taxpayer.
I very much want to give you an answer like June of 2025, but I mean, that's a hard question to answer. But I will say this, I'm very comfortable that we will get there because, like I said, we had 25 material weaknesses. We had 2,500 findings. The light bulbs are going off that for every system out there, you're going to have to pay development, maintenance, enhancements costs. You're going to have to, you're subject to audit samples. You're going to get findings. And you're going to have to write corrective action plans. And at the end of the day, it just costs more money to have multiple systems doing the same thing or not doing it what they're supposed to efficiently. So in my experience in my career, when we're confronting these kinds of issues, the light bulbs go off. Hey, we're going to be a whole lot better off with less systems, doing things a whole lot more consistently and efficiently. So I don't know. I can't give you a date, but I'm comfortable we're on that path.
And just a final thought, I think the big challenge, just from my assessment of the federal system, is that you have what is called federally government compliant systems. There's certain federal rules in order for systems to be functional. The problem is, since every agency has their own specifics, so you have to start tweaking it. So here comes Mod 1, then Mod 2, and it costs X amount of money.
Oh, that's really cool.
Yeah.
You know, it's a very big challenge. Maybe your thoughts.
It is. Every agency out there loves to insist that they're different, but we're not all that different. So I think as budgets go down, there's just going to be an internal budget pressure that we're going to all have to migrate to more consistent systems and data formats and structures.
All right, thank you. We are about out of time. I hope you will join me in thanking our panelists for being with us this morning.